And good evening once again. Day 1240 of this Trump administration, 144 days to go until the presidential election. Donald Trump is now trying to keep the outrage over the killing of George Floyd and the calls for justice from engulfing his presidency and his campaign for re-election. Many inside and outside the administration have conceded his response thus far has been out of sync with much of the nation. He has declared himself the president of law and order, sometimes just tweeting out that phrase. Now, in an interview with Fox News, he's openly questioning the motives behind the protests that have erupted on America's streets for nearly 3 weeks.
I think you had protesters for different reasons, and then you had protesting also because, they just didn't know. I watched it very closely. Why are you here? And they really weren't able to say. What we saw was a terrible thing. And we've seen it over the years. We haven't, this was one horrible example, but you've seen other terrible examples. We can't let something like this, where you have a bad apple, go out and, destroy the image of of millions of people that take really good care of us. And then you have a movement where they say, let's not have a police department.
Our NBC News colleagues who cover the White House for us report that aides to the president are divided on how he should respond to the demonstrations 18 days in, that he's caught between those who want him to, quote, calm a country in the grips of a pandemic, economic uncertainty, and civil unrest, and those who want him to lean into aggressive tactics. The report indicates Trump's unwillingness to come down on one side or the other. That has frustrated his allies, led to a slow, sometimes contradictory response. Quote, "These aren't my voters," the president has said repeatedly, dismissing protesters in discussions with aides about how to respond. One advisor said the president and his allies should be taking on the Black Lives Matter movement by calling it a front organization for a lot of crazy leftist ideas that are unpopular. But another political ally said he's choosing not to set the agenda on policing and race in the U.S. when he should be leading on those issues by taking steps like banning tactics like chokeholds. Trump has said he plans to issue some sort of executive order on standards for use of force. He appears to be zeroing in on chokeholds and his own unique description of them.
I don't like chokeholds. Now, I will say this. As somebody that, you grow up and you wrestle and you fight and or you see what happens. Sometimes if you're alone and you're fighting somebody who's tough and you get somebody in a chokehold, what are you going to do? Say, oh, and it's a real bad person, and you know that. And they do exist. If you're thinking about it, then you realize maybe there is a bad fight and the officer gets somebody in a position. The concept of chokehold sounds so innocent, so perfect. And then you realize if it's a one-on-one, now if it's two-on-one, that's a little bit of a different story. That being said, it would be, I think, a very good thing that generally speaking, it should be ended.
Trump has yet to give any kind of speech on race or unity or race relations, preferring to bring these topics up at smaller, more carefully curated events. Politico is reporting that some people of color in senior roles at the White House say the administration had, quote, a huge opportunity and botched it. Tomorrow, Trump will have a chance to speak to a large group when he addresses graduates at West Point. He'll be speaking to over 1,000 newly minted second lieutenants in the midst of an extraordinary falling out with the nation's military after the Pentagon's top general publicly apologized for showing up with Trump at that now famous photo op minutes after federal authorities forced protesters off public grounds. That was followed by scathing criticism from ex-Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, as well as several former commanders and military officials. As Trump has sought to navigate difficult points in his presidency, he has often compared his performance to past presidents and most recently to Abraham Lincoln.
I think I've done more for the black community than any other president. And let's take a pass on Abraham Lincoln because he did good, although it's always questionable. In other words, the end result.
Well, we are free, Mr. President.
But we
are
did
free.
Pretty well. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, no,
so I'm going to take a pass on Abe, Honest Abe, as we call it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.